Intelligence has been a concept of considerable importance for educationists, researchers, and psychologists. There have been traditional definitions of intelligence with a focus on the cognitive abilities of individuals. But there are more recent definitions with a variety of focuses on the definition and concepts of intelligence. And these include the concepts of multiple intelligences and more recently the concept of emotional intelligence. In this presentation, we will discuss what is emotional intelligence and what is the relationship of emotional intelligence to the process and outcomes of education. So we will begin with a basic understanding of the important aspects of human personality, that is human rationality and emotion. So human rationality basically refers to the use of reason or logic in understanding and reacting to natural and social phenomena. We can have examples of this ability of humans, that is rationality. For example, when we are doing assessments of situations, when we are involved in the process of analysis, in the process of calculating things or calculating situations, critiquing and solving problems. So these are the general examples of the use of human rationality. Generally, rationality is a process that is more intentional, systematic, and voluntary. On the other hand, human emotion is something that generally refers to the use of feelings in understanding and reacting to natural and social phenomena. So we can have examples of human emotions such as love, hate, anger, happiness, and sadness, and so on. Generally, emotions are less intentional, they are less systematic, and they're less voluntary, or in many cases involuntary. And so this is the main difference between human rationality and human emotion. But we must remember that these terms are not entirely exclusive. And so there are elements of inclusivity where human rationality and emotion are related and in some cases even interdependent. So although it is useful to understand the distinction between rationality or the divergences of rationality and emotion, it is also important to recognize that rationality and emotions are also inclusive aspects of the human personality. Now, moving on to further understand the concepts of rationality and then the movement or the move towards the concept of the emphasis of the emotional aspects of personality, especially in the field of education. So the traditional focus of the educational process has always been on the understanding and development of the rational aspects of human personality. So, for example, general intelligence is is something that is measurable through the IQ tests or intelligent quotient tests that have been developed over many decades. The focus in terms of measuring general intelligence is on, and in the process of education is on the imparting of knowledge and skills. So with a focus on the numerical, verbal, and the cognitive development of the students. so in the tradition, with a focus on the traditional intelligence in the educational process, what will happen is, and what is actually happening is that the focus is on the imparting of knowledge and skills, and in terms of the measuring those knowledge and that knowledge and skills in a numerical way or verbally, and so the focus is on the cognitive development. Now, as I mentioned, that there has been a shift in this focus on the intellectual development, and because there is an increasing realization that it is not just our rational side or intellectual side that is important as a focus of the process of education, but also it is important that we need to function well emotionally. And so the functioning of the emotional aspects of the human personality is also an important aspect of our personality development. Here is an important and a very interesting quote that has been attributed to Bertrand Russell, the famous British philosopher and educationist as well, who says, who actually downplays the importance of rationality in human affairs. And so he says, man is a rational animal. So at least I have been told. Throughout a long life I have looked diligently for evidence in favor of this statement, but so far I have not had the good fortune to come across it. Actually, what he means is that although man is called a rational animal, that is, man is someone, or human beings are actually defined by their rationality and their intellect. But in practice, that does not seem to be the case, because in many cases, it is our emotions that actually drive us towards doing things and towards understanding things. And so this emphasizes the importance of emotional intelligence. Now, what is emotional intelligence? It has been defined in a variety of ways, but generally, emotional intelligence refers to our ability or perceived ability to understand, process, and manage our own emotions and feelings, as well as those of others, productively and effectively. So we can say that emotional intelligence helps us in understanding our emotions, and also in understanding and processing and realizing emotions among other people. Now, this concept has been traced back to several fundamental works, including that of Robert Thorndike, whose social intelligence theory, which is based on understanding and responding to social situations, is an important one. Similarly, Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences theory, with a focus where two important aspects of the multiple intelligence theory are the interpersonal and intrapersonal intelligences, which are aspects of intelligence that deals with our emotions. Similarly, Van Leon Paynes is one of the pioneers of this type of intelligence, who basically coined the word emotional intelligence. Mayer and Salovey's works on relationships of emotions and thinking is also an important work in this regard. But the concept of emotional intelligence has been popularized by Daniel Goleman, who wrote this book, Emotional Intelligence, Why It Can Matter More Than IQ. And that became a kind of sensational research in the field of intelligence, and that actually highlighted the importance of emotional intelligence in terms of our development and in terms of its educational value. Now, what are the characteristics, some of the general characteristics of emotionally intelligent people or emotional intelligence that are highlighted by Goldman include self-awareness, which is actually understanding of the self. So how do we understand ourselves? Our feelings, our emotions, what are the sources of our feelings and emotions, and what are the implications of those feelings and emotions for us. This is one of the aspects of the general characteristics of emotional intelligence. Similarly, it's not just understanding but self-regulation, which actually means that we are able to have self-control and discipline. And so if we have self-control and discipline, if we can control our emotions, if we can play around our feelings, if we can effectively use our feelings and emotions, that will mean we have emotional intelligence. Similarly, self-motivation, which actually is motivating oneself, driving oneself, taking initiatives, taking steps, making oneself confident, and so on, in order to move towards our goal to take steps. Then social awareness, which is actually awareness regarding the emotions and feelings of others, or in other words, we can say empathetic attitude towards others, or empathy for others is another important characteristic of emotional intelligence. And lastly, social skills, which actually means that if we have an understanding of or self-awareness, if we can have self-control and discipline, if we can drive and if we can take initiatives, and if we can feel empathy with others, then we can have social skills, which is actually the development and management of relationship with others. So emotionally intelligent people will have generally effective relationship, productive relationship with other people. Now, emotional intelligence, and why is it important that we as educationists or as students, we need to understand, to have an understanding of emotional intelligence, or in what ways is emotional intelligence related to the field of education? Why is it important? So generally in our routine life, what happens is that we need to make use of our general intelligence, and that actually means we need to solve problems. For example, solving mathematical problems, we need to calculate and assess and analyze. We need to make logical judgments. We need to make good verbal arguments and counter arguments. And that's fine, and these are essential qualities. But we also need to make consistent use of our emotional intelligence. And what does that mean? That actually means that we need to understand and deal with our emotions effectively. And we also need to understand and respond to other people's emotions and feelings effectively, so that we are socially intelligent. So as I said in the very beginning, the two terms, the general intelligence or the IQ and the emotional intelligence or the EQ, these are not exclusive. In many cases, they are interdependent. And if one has high IQ but low EQ, generally it will be difficult for such people to be very successful in practical situations. So that's why the importance of emotional intelligence is something that we need to understand as educationists and as academics as well, and also as professionals in different fields. Now, how is it that we can actually develop the emotional intelligence of our students, or maybe other co-workers and subordinates as well? So there are certain ways in which we can, certain strategies that we can adopt to develop the emotional development the emotional intelligence of students. So first of all, we need to have an awareness and knowledge of various human emotions, and we need to develop realization and knowledge of our students related to the various human emotions, such as sadness or happiness or anger and frustrations. And so this awareness and knowledge is very important. Then we also need to develop awareness among our students regarding the causes and consequences of emotional states and actions. So what are the causes of the different emotional states that we are in, or our students are in? And what are the actions that come as a result of those states? And then what are the causes of those, and what actually those states and actions lead to, or the consequences of those? So that is something that we need to develop. Then we need to develop strategies for dealing with emotional states and actions and reactions inside the classrooms or outside the classrooms, in the playground, and everywhere in the society, in our social life. Understanding and reacting to students' emotional states, actions and reaction. Again, this is an important aspect of the job of an educationist or a teacher. Then just understanding is not sufficient. We also need to be able to teach and demonstrate empathy to our students as teachers. So empathy actually means understanding others' point of view, or getting into other people's shoes, getting into and understanding the situations that other people are in. Then exposure to a variety of emotional situations in and outside the classroom is also an important way of developing the emotional intelligence of students. So we need to put students into a variety of situations: pleasant situations, difficult situations, complex situations, so that they can develop their emotional intelligence, their perseverance, and their confidence. And so through this we can build their confidence. And we also need to develop the independence of thought and action among our students. So if our students are able to think independently, to take actions independently, to understand situations, to remain confident about their abilities to deal with situations, this is something that will help in the development of their emotional intelligence. So here are some suggested readings and sources that you can refer to for further strengthening your concepts and understanding regarding this very important concept of emotional intelligence.